Hello everyone, Lazy Titan here. This video is a combination of my starting pitcher and relievers tier lists. I wanted to put this together just so you had them both in the same place. And with that said, sit back, relax, and enjoy. I do want to start this video out with a disclaimer that pitching is very subjective and it changes depending on who you're hitting against. So I may have 99 Roger Clemens, but if you're the greatest hitter in the world, it's not going to make a difference. But some starters are definitely better than others, whether it be pitch mix, velo, or just their release. So that's a lot of what goes into the pitching side of things. And so with that being said, let us get started with 99 Roger Clemens, the AL Collection Reward. Roger Clemens is currently the only 99 overall pitcher in the game. His attributes, good stamina, the through nines are good, great clutch, 110, highest in the game. The pitch mix, four seam, splitter, slider, curveball, sinker. Excellent pitch mix. Obviously, he has good control, decent velocity difference on his pitches. He is the best pitcher in the game. But with that said, he is not a Randy Johnson, John Donaldson type character. So he is an S-tier pitcher, but he's not the greatest thing since sliced bread out there. Up next, we have live series Shohei Ohtani. Obviously, Shohei can both pitch and hit, so that's the big benefit of this card, similar to Babe Ruth from last year. In terms of attributes, good hits, good Ks, control's not entirely there, clutch is pretty good, good velo, sweeper, four-seam, cutter, splitter, sinker. Not much velocity difference, but he is Shohei. He does have a kind of funky release, so he does mess some people up. And of course, the good thing about this card is he does get inside edge. So if you ever see him up on the day, so right now he's up 4 points because he is good against his current opponent. So that's something to always keep an eye out with live series cards, or if they get supercharged, is that they can always be up or down depending on the day. So right now he's playing up to 95, so he's better than he would normally be. So with that said, I am going to put Shohei also in the S tier. I think the release, along with this pitch mix, along with the hits and Ks per nine, makes him one of the better pitchers in the game. Up next, we have Jordan Zimmerman of the Washington Nationals. Overall, good hits. The Ks are not particularly great. Good control, good velo, an all right velo difference of his pitches. So the four-seam slider, 12-6 circle change sinker, he's okay. His release is nothing too fancy or anything like that. He has no quirks that, make him overpowered. He doesn't have outlier on any of his pitches. So is he a good pitcher? Yeah. Is he the greatest thing ever? No, he's nowhere near as good as Clemens or Shohei, in my opinion. He is an A-tier pitcher, but he is nothing more than that. Up next, we have the Dodgers Collection Reward, Fernando Valenzuela. Good hits, good Ks, decent control, no velo, but that's what you get of these Fernando cards. They have no velocity. So the velo difference is pretty good, though, at 21. So the velo difference, for some understanding, is the difference between his highest velocity pitch and his lowest. He has 99 break, so he has a lot of break in his pitches. Screwball, four-seam, curveball, circle change. So if you've never seen a Fernando card, as I assume most people have, he does have a strange left-handed, sort of overhanded release with the way he does his pitches. So it is kind of confusing to see the first time you ever see it. And there is a definitely huge velo difference of the four-seam fastball at 92, the circle change at 71. And so on lower difficulties, the four-seam comes in decently fast, and then when you get the circle change, it looks like it takes forever. People either is swinging super early or super late. So I think Fernando is if you've never seen a Fernando card, I think he would mess you up. So I think he is a B tier card. I think if you've seen a Fernando card before, he's nothing too special. But he is also the Dodgers Collection Reward. And so you have to get Shohei, Mookie Betts, and a bunch of other diamonds to get this card. And I don't think that's worth it at this point. Another collection reward up next is Johan Santana for the Mets. Good stamina. The through nines are all right. Decent control. The velocity is not very high, but it's okay. Good break. Not much velo difference. Only a four pitch mix of four seam, circle change, sinker, and slider. This card basically throws the same velocity for almost all of its pitches. I don't know how much tunneling you get done with this card, and the release is not amazing. There are no quirks for this card either, and he's really just a 4-pitch pitcher. There's nothing particularly special that would make this card worth doing the entire collection for. So with that in mind, I think he's a C-tier pitcher. I faced him a few times through the Diamond Quest and on my own, just doing some testing, and there's nothing particularly interesting about Johan that's going to make him better or worth doing the entire collection. Up next, we have Gaylord Perry, a card who I admit I have not faced as of now, but the hits per 9 and Ks per 9 look good. Not much control. The break's good. Good velo difference, probably the most we've seen so far outside of Venezuela. 4-seam slider, curveball, forkball, sinker. So he's kind of got the Raleigh Fingers pitch mix. So there is some tunneling with the 4-seam forkball, similar to John Donaldson. I don't think this card is anywhere near as good as any of the John Donaldson cards, but I think overall he is a good pitcher. I'm going to put him in the A tier for now, unless I see him later and just annihilate him, and then I'll update that maybe later. Steve Carlton, who is one of the World Series rewards. Hits per 9 and walks are not great, but the Ks per 9 are pretty good. Control and velocity are sort of average. Velo difference, not much there. Slider, 4-seam, curveball, changeup, sinker. The pitch mix is good, but there's nothing about this card that says it's worth making it to World Series for. You can probably just buy him off the market for cheaper. So overall, I'd say he's an A-tier card. Nothing too fancy to write home about. Up next, we have Roki Sasaki. This is the first card other than the Clemens that has outlier, so he has an outlier sinker. This is the reward for getting all the pipeline collection done. So he has good hits per 9. Ks are okay, not great control. Good pitching clutch, okay velo difference, good velocity. So he has outlier sinker, so that sinker's going to be probably hitting 96, 97. Splitter, slider, 4-seam. I think, and I've seen his release as well, I think he has the potential to be pretty nasty to face. So I'm going to put him actually in the S tier. Up next, we have the new Threads card that just came out, Corbin Burns. Similar to other Corbin Burns cards, the hits and Ks are okay. The walks are good. Good control, good velo, decent velocity difference. Excellent pitch mix, cutter, curveball, slider, circle chain, sinker. So I think this is one of the cards, as I was talking about, if you've never faced before, he will mess you up. But if you know what it's like, it's probably not going to. But because of the pitch mix and just because he does have sort of a weird arm angle kind of situation going on, I am going to put him in the S tier. But as I said previously, just to reiterate, just because the card is S tier doesn't mean it's going to be overpowering. None of these cards compared to a Randy Johnson or John Donaldson or any of these ones do either. Up next, we have the Diamond Quest Collection reward, or just Diamond Quest reward, Walker Buehler. Decent hits. The Ks are okay. Good control. Good velo. Good velocity difference and break on his pitches. 4-seam cutter, 12-6 sinker sweeper. So he does have cutter sinker, and the sweeper can kind of act like a slider, and the 4-seam's there. So overall, I think the issue with this card is all these pitches, the sinker, sweeper, cutter, 4-seam, have no real velocity difference, 96, 92, 95, 92 respectively. The curveball is slow at 76, but in MLB The Show, curveballs don't behave like they do in real life, and people lay off them all the time, so it's not really a good pitch. So really, he's 4-seam, cutter, sinker, sweeper, all basically at the same mile an hour. This card is okay. He's a B tier card. Nothing to write home about. Up next, we have the program reward, Max Scherzer for the new Threads program. Good hits, okay Ks, decent control. Velocity is really not where you want it. He has break, but 4-seam slider, slurve, circle chains, cutter. The pitch mix is pretty good, but he has no real out pitch. He's not particularly throwing very hard, and these pitches are all similar in velocity, and he has a release that's very easy to read. I'd say he's really a C tier card. Unfortunately, that's just how Scherzer is in the game. Amazing in real life, but in the game, he's just never been very good. Up next, we have Andrew Painter for the Philadelphia Phillies. Good Ks per 9. Control and velo are good. okay velocity difference. Four seam, circle change, slider, curveball. No sinker cutter, just a lot of breaking pitches. And the four seam is pretty fast at 98. So overall, I'd say he's okay. I'd say he has an all right. This is an all right card. He could be very good for you, or he could get lit up. I'm going to say that's what the B tier really is. Up next, we have Noah Schultz. Now, Noah Schultz does have an interesting release. He does have kind of a Randy Johnson sort of sidearm action going on. So the stamina, hits per 9, Ks per 9 are pretty good. Control is not really there. Decent pitching clutch at 90. Good velo, good break. Not much velocity difference. Four seam, slider, circle change, sinker, sweeper. So he's got the four seam, sinker, slider going on. And the sweeper and circle change are both also decently fast. So I think this is one of the cards where velocity difference may not make as big of a deal due to the release. And also, I think harder thrown circle changes and breaking pitches are better than the slower ones. Unless, of course, it's a major velocity difference, like if you have four seam fastball at 90, at outlier of 101, and you're throwing a sweeper at 79. That's the real difference there. But I think overall, if all your pitches are at least decently close together in velocity, but you do have breaking stuff that breaks away, I think that's pretty good. So I think this Noah Schultz is actually an S tier card. I faced him a couple times, and he is very difficult, in my opinion, to hit. Up next, we have the XP Reward Path, Jake Arrieta. Hits per 9 are good. Ks per 9 is okay. Walks are okay as well. The pitch and clutch is decent at 82. He's got good velo, good break on his pitches. Sinker, slider, curveball, circle change, four seam. He's got the four seam, sinker, slider, circle change. And he also does have a kind of an interesting release. It's sort of a overhand kind of Shohei kind of thing going on, but not as pronounced. And I think in this case, the curveball is actually decent because of how fast it is at 83 miles an hour. I think harder thrown curveballs are better than the slower ones in this game anyway. So with that being said, I'm going to put Jake Arrieta in the A tier. All right, up next we have Diamond Quest Reward, Garrett Crochet. Crochet, the hits per 9 are okay, good Ks, decent walks. The clutch is good at 87, control is good at 82, good velo. Not much velocity difference. The brakes, decent at 82. Four seam cutter, sweeper, circle change, sinker. Four seam cutter, sinker, and sweeper. So you kind of have the slider, the four pitch mix. That's the good one in MLB The Show. The circle change is also good, just as an off speed pitch. So overall, I'd say that Garrett Crochet is an A tier pitcher. Up next, we have the mini season reward, CC Sabathia. CC has good stamina. The hits and Ks per 9 are not great. The walks are decent. The pitching clutch is bad at 68, so you do not want to get runners on with this card. Not much in velo difference. Four seam, circle change, slider, sinker, cutter. He's got a good pitch mix, but they're all relatively the same and all thrown relatively slow. So I'm going to say this CC card, he's pretty good for a free card, but overall, I don't think he's that good. I think he's a C tier card down here with Santana and Scherzer. Up next, we have Tariq Skubal. Good hits, decent Ks. The walks are all right. Good velo. The velo difference is good at 19. Not much break, but good control. Four seam, circle change, sinker, slider, knuckle curve. The knuckle curve is really slow at 78, so I wouldn't see anyone ever really being fooled by that. The sinker and four seam are close in velocity, so you can tunnel them pretty good. And the slider, circle change are good as well. So I'd say this is depending on how he does throughout the year, this card could go up or down. But right now, I'd say he's in the B tier. All right, up next, we have the new Threads card, Max Fried. Max Fried, okay, hits per 9. The Ks and walks are not great. Good pitch and clutch at 85. The velocity's okay at 90. Breaking stuff's good at 99. 19 velo difference, so a good difference in velocities. Four seam, curveball, sinker, circle change, sweeper. The curveball, not very good at just 75 miles an hour. But the four seam, sinker, circle change, and sweeper are all fairly good pitches. He's also got a somewhat interesting release. It's not the funkiest thing you've ever seen, but it's okay. So, and he has no real quirks that are going to boost this card up, but I think he's an okay pitcher. I think he's a B tier starter. Next up, we have Chris Sale. Sale has good hits per 9. The Ks and walks are okay. Good velo. Decent velocity difference. Slider, 4-seam, circle change, sinker. If you've ever faced a Chris Sale card, he does have a slide arm release, so he does have a bit of that does take a bit to get used to. So I think overall he's a good card, but if you've ever faced him before, it's nothing new. There's nothing that makes this card stand out particularly highly, so I'm going to put him down here in the B tier. Up next, we have Zach Wheeler. I'm going to have to open up here. Zach Wheeler. So Zach Wheeler has decent hits. The Ks are not great. Decent walks, good pitch and clutch. Good velo, not amazing break. 4-seam, sinker, sweeper, cutter, 12-6 curve. I think this card plays above its attributes. I've played with Zach Wheeler a bit, and I think he just, overall, I think he has a decent enough release that's kind of hard to read out of the hand. And also this 4-seam, sinker, cutter are able to match together very well just due to how well he can control them. And the sweeper's okay as well. And he does have a faster thrown curve ball at 82. So I'm actually going to say Zach Wheeler is also one of the S-tier pitchers as of now, just because of how he is kind of has a weird release along with the good pitch mix. So up next we have Ubaldo Jimenez, who I will have to look up here. This is the inning reward starting pitcher, new to this year, so it's been a while since we've had this card in the game. Decent hits, Ks and walks are all right. Good clutch at 96. Velo's good, so is break. Good velocity difference. 4-seam, sinker, slider, splitter, curveball. The curveball's not amazing at 77, but every other pitch here is good. I'd say he is overall an A-tier card. He has a good release as well, so he has that going in his favor as well. Up next, we have Tom Glavine. So Tom Glavine here has okay hits per 9, okay walks. Ks are not amazing. The pitch and clutch is not great at 73. Good velo difference. Sinker, circle change, sweeping curve, slider, 4-seam. I've never had much issue facing a Tom Glavine card. They're all kind of the same. He throws slow, and he's a little hard to locate with his slow stuff. So overall, I think he gets hit pretty hard all the time. So I'm going to put him down here into the C tier. Up next, we have Yoshinobu Yamamoto. Good hits, decent Ks, good walks. Control's all right. Velo's also just okay. Good velocity difference. 4-seam, splitter, curveball, cutter, slider. He's got the 4-seam cutter, and the splitter and slider are all right pitches as well. Curveball, not particularly hard thrown. Does have the kind of overhand release similar to Shohei and Roki. So I'd say he's an A-tier card. He's not going to blow you away, but he's okay. All right. Up next, we have Paul Skeens. Decent hits. The Ks are okay. The walks are not great. Good pitching clutch at 94. Good break. Good velo. This card does have outlier on his 4-seam, so he's got that going for him. Sinker, curveball, sweeper, slider. 4-seam, sinker, slider here. I think this pitch mix alone probably makes this card, especially with the velocity he's throwing at this 4-seam. Lacks a bit of control, so if you're not good at locating your pitches, he'll run into issues. But overall, I think this is a very good card. I'm going to say he is an A tier. Up next, we have Greg Maddux. The hits and Ks are not great. Good control, like all Maddux cards. Not very good velocity difference. Sinker, circle change, cutter, curveball, slider. No 4-seam really to tunnel with the sinker or cutter. Circle change and curveball are equal in speed. Not a whole lot of velo difference here, and has no real velocity, and his Ks and hits per 9 are not great, so he's going to have big PCIs. So I'd say he's also a C tier card, similar to Glavine. Up next, we have Jackson Jobe. Great hits per 9 at 96. The Ks are okay at 78. He has bad walks at 58, so not amazing control. The velo's okay. Decent velo difference at 15. Good break on his pitches. 4-seam cutter, circle change, sweeper, curveball. Curveball is actually probably pretty good at 84 miles an hour, so that's probably the hardest thrown curveball of any pitcher right now. The four seam is good, is a good difference in velocity from the circle change cutter, the sweeper as well. So overall, I think Jackson Jobe is actually a pretty good starter for getting for free out of the Tigers Team Affinity. So I'm going to put him in the A tier. Up next, we have Joe Musgrove of the Padres. So Joe Musgrove is a right-handed pitcher. Let me pull him up here. There we go. The hits and Ks are not great. Walks pretty good. Not much velo difference. Four-seam, curveball, cutter, sweeper, circle change. Not much velo difference here. Nothing to write home about this card, really. The PCIs against him are going to be pretty big due to the bad hits and Ks per 9. So I'm actually going to put him down here in the C tier as well. Getting closer to the end here, we have Al Leiter. So Al Leiter, good hits, good Ks, not great walks, but that's how all Al Leiter cards are. Good pitch and clutch, good velo, good break. Sinker, cutter, curveball, sliders, changeup. He doesn't have great control on any of these pitches, but as Al Leiter always is, he usually paints the corners very well. Very hard to hit, especially on higher difficulties. So I think if you're on lower difficulties, this card's not amazing. But I think the higher up in difficulty you are, this card's good. So I'm actually going to say he's an S tier card on higher difficulties. Up next, we have Jim Katt, new to this year. Hits and Ks are not amazing. Decent walks. Control is not great. Okay velocity. Good velocity difference at 20. Slider, curveball, sinker, slur, screwball. He's actually has a funky release that he really flicks his hand when he releases the ball. So it's kind of hard to see what the pitch is coming out of the hand, especially out of the stretch. So with that being said, I'm actually going to put this card into the A tier. Just because he is a little bit difficult, because he is a new legend and he is a bit difficult to read. Up next, we have Roy Halladay. Not very good hits or Ks. Good walks. Not great velo difference. Cutter, sinker, curveball, splitter, four seam. Good pitch mix. If you're able to paint with the corners with him, I think he's pretty good. And I think he'd be good on higher difficulties, obviously due to his control. But just due to the size of his PCIs on lower difficulties, I don't see his being a very good card. So I'm actually going to say he's a B tier card. Up next, we have a new legend for this year for the Red Sox, Clay Buchholz. The hits per 9 are okay. The Ks per 9 and walks are not great. Great pitching clutch at 114, probably the highest of any starter right now outside of Clemens. The pitching different, the velo difference is okay. Good break, good velo. Sinker, four-seam, circle change, cutter, curveball. I've seen this card in action. He has nasty breaking stuff. I'd say he's an S-tier pitcher just because of how his release is and all the stuff he has going on. And last up here, I had a couple other cards I thought about rating, but I didn't. We have a bronze card. Now, if you've never seen this card before, this is Matt Waldron. He has a knuckleball, the only knuckleballer in the game. And it does have a very weird movement, especially on higher difficulties. Sweeper, four-seam, sinker, cutter. You're not too worried about the rest of the pitches with this card, honestly. Just the knuckle curve itself. The knuckleball, not knuckle curve. The knuckleball itself makes this card impossible to hit sometimes. And sometimes you just can immediately just, destroy him. So for that, I actually made a tier specifically for him called RNG tier. This card is either going to destroy you or you're going to destroy it. There's no real in between. So that is the tier list. I'm going to save this and I'll go over it again real quick here. And I'll be right back. Okay, so here is the final tier list for the starting pitchers as they currently stand at MLB The Show 25. If you like this video, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. So up first, we have Darren O'Day, the AL East Collection Reward. O'Day has good hits per 9, good Ks per 9, good walks per 9, max pitch and clutch, max break. Not much velo difference, but the slider, sinker, circle change, four seam. He's not a velo pitcher, but what he does have is a nasty release from the right-hand side. And he does have the best current stats of any relief pitcher that's right-handed. So I'm going to put him into the S tier. After him, we have Trevor Hoffman, who is the reward for the Padres collection. Good hits, good Ks, good walks, good control, good pitch and clutch, good break. Circle change, four seam, cutter, slider, curveball. He has a normal pitch release. Overall, I think he's a good reliever at this time of the year, so I'm going to say he's an A tier. Next up after that, we have the new Threads player, Kenley Jansen, who just came out. He has good hits per nines at 111, good Ks at 93. The walks leave something to be desired at 74. He has good pitching clutch at 97, decent control and velo. He is missing the sinker, which he had a couple of years ago, so that does hurt his pitch mix of just cutter, slider, two seam. You can kind of use the two seam as a sinker from time to time, but not really. So with that being said, I'm going to say Kenley Jansen is a B tier reliever. Next up, let's talk about Rob Dibble. Four seam slider cutter, good velo, does have outlier on the fastball, so it'll be pumping at 101. The slider and cutter are both below that, so it should be good to tunnel with. The Ks are good at 118. The controls and hits kind of suffer. 86 pitching clutch is not exactly where you want to be at. So I think if your opponent can't hit a fastball, obviously this card will be good. But if they can, I think this is just a B tier reliever. Nothing to write home about. Up next, we have Rich Gossage, aka Goose Gossage. Good hits, good Ks, decent control, good velocity, good pitch velo difference, good break. Four seam slurve, sinker, changeup. It's a good pitch mix. He does have outlier on his fastball. So with that being said, he has a much better pitch mix than Rob Dibble. So I'm going to say Goose Gossage is an A tier reliever. Actually, you know what? I'll say he's S, just compared to these other guys, because he's definitely better than Hoffman. Up next, we have the brand new Dave Robertson. Good hits per nine, good Ks per nine. The walks at 48, so he's not going to be very good at controlling. Good pitching clutch at 125, good break, decent velo. Cutter, knuckle curve, slider. It's a bad pitch mix. If this had a sinker instead of a knuckle curve, I think it'd be nasty. But it's just cutter, slider, basically. The knuckle curve is fast, so I'll give him that. So he may play all right, but if they're able to hit the curveball, it's basically just cutter, slider, which is not a great pitch mix. So I'm going to put him in the B tier. Up next, we have Liam Hendriks. Four seam slider, 12-6 curve circle change. Again, the curveball doesn't work really well in this game, even though it is a faster thrown one. So it's really just four seam slider circle change, which is okay. The through nines are good. The pitching clutch is okay at 92. I'd say he'd do all right. He's probably also in the B tier. None of these guys will really blow you away with any of their stuff. Next up, we have Emmanuel Clase, who has outlier on his cutter. He has cutter, slider, four seam. The hits and walks per nine are good. The Ks per nine are not. So he's going to have rather large PCI sizes. The cutter, slider, four seam, it's an okay mix. It's not amazing, but it's for this time of year where we're at, I think he'd do all right. I want to put him in the A tier. Up next, we have Mason Miller, who's similar to Clase, four seam slider circle change. However, this card has outlier on the four seam. So I do think that makes him a little better than the outlier on the cutter. But this card also really has bad control. Only 57 walks and 84 control. Good velo, good hits per nine, good Ks per nine. The pitch and clutch is not great, and the velo difference isn't very good. So I'm going to say he's also A tier. I don't think he's going to much better than Clase or much worse. Next up, we have Justin Martinez, who has outlier sinker with a slider, splitter, four seam. Good hits, good Ks. The walks are not great. The control is not great. Good pitching clutch at 95. Good break on his pitches. Decent velo difference. So I think this is actually one of the cards that is also an S tier pitcher, just because of his mix and the velo he has going. Up next, we have Raleigh Fingers, the Brewers Team Affinity reward. For For hits per nine, we have 85, 84 Ks, 88 walks. So good through nines, 111 clutch is good. Sinker, slider, forkball, four seam, great pitch mix, good velo difference. This is an S tier card. Up next, we have the new Threads Ryan Presley, who just came out, 84 gold. The through nines are okay at 80, 83. The walks are all right at 91. Decent pitching clutch at 95. Good control, good velo, good pitch difference in velocity. Four seam, slider, slurve, circle change, sinker. He has a good mix. I'd say he's an A tier closing pitcher. Next up, we have Live Series Devin Williams. Good hits per nine at 117. Actually great hits per nine. Great Ks at 97. The control is really bad at 32. Max pitching clutch, four seam screwball cutter. He has the best screwball in the game. The four seam cutter are all right. If this card can locate, he's good. But if he's also probably going to walk quite a few people if you're trying to use him. So I'd say he's in the B tier. If his control was better, and maybe if he gets upgraded throughout the year, I think he'll be okay. But as for right now, I think he's B tier. Next up, we have the Marlins Collection Reward, Rob Nen. Doesn't have any quirks. Good through nines, except for walks. His control is lacking. Four seam slider splitter. Not an amazing pitch mix. He has kind of a funky release, so he has that going for him. But overall, I'd say this is probably the first C tier card. Next up, we have Lee Smith. 71 hits, 89 Ks, 78 walks. Good clutch at 106. Good velo. Four seam slider, cutter, forkball, good pitch mix. So, with that said, I'm going to put him into he's in the A tier. Next up, we have Live Series Felix Bautista. Good hits and Ks per nine. 36 for the walks, so not great control. Good pitch velo difference. Has an outlier on the four seam. So it's going to be a four seam at 101. Splitter, slider. It's an okay pitch mix, similar to Mason Miller and Clase. I'd say you'd want one of them, not all three, but you could probably do with one of them. If I was to pick one, I'd probably take Mason Miller. And last up, Ryan Helsley. Good hits per nine, decent Ks, bad control, good clutch at 109, four seam slider, 12-6 curve. He's in the C tier. He does have an outlier fastball, but overall, he's nothing to write home about and is nothing compared to Miller, Clase, or even Felix Bautista. So he's going to join Rob Nib down here in the C tier. So this is the final list here for the right-handed relievers. So I'll be back in just 1 second with the left-handed relievers. Here we are now with the left-handed relievers. There's quite a few less of them than there are righties, but that's typical for this time of year. So let's get started with the new Threads Aroldis Chapman. He is the collection reward for collecting 20 of the new Threads players. He has a hits per nines of 105, Ks 118, lacks a bit of control at 47. Clutch is okay at 95, velo difference at 12, not amazing. Outlier four seam, outlier sinker. This card has outlier sinker, not outlier four seam. Still throws the four seam very hard at 99. Sinker, slider, splitter. He's the best lefty reliever there is right now. He is obviously S tier. Up next, we have Josh Hader, who's currently supercharged, but we'll be back down to an 81 here in a couple of days. So these stats are not entirely accurate, but 114 hits, 103 Ks, 54 walks. Good control velocity even when not supercharged. Two seam slider, circle change. So in this case, the two seam's kind of acting like a sinker, which it won't on lower difficulties, but it could work on higher difficulties that way. So overall, I think Josh Hader's probably a B tier for the current lefties we have. Up next, we have Tanner Scott, another new Threads card that just came out. Good hits and Ks per nine. Control is lacking. Good break. Great pitch and clutch at 121. four seam, slider, circle change. So not the greatest pitch mix in the world, but I do think the Ks and the pitch and clutch do make up for some of the shortcomings of this card. Just because we have so few lefties right now, I'm going to put him in the A tier. All right. Up next, we have the Ranked Path Reward card, Mark Davis. Good hits and Ks per 9. Lacking control, similar to the other cards we've been over so far. Clutch is decent at 91. Okay velo difference. Four-seam curveball, circle change, splitter, slider. Nothing really stands out about this card. He doesn't have outlier. He doesn't throw particularly hard. The pitches are all relatively the same speed. He's okay. I'll put him in the B tier. Up next, we have Andrew Miller. Has a funky release, good hits and Ks, lacks control like most all these other lefties do. Good clutch at 117. Good break and velo. Slider, four-seam sinker. This card has a funky release, which kind of makes him hard to hit and hard to read out of the hand. So I think he's A tier. Next up, we got Billy Wagner, who does not have outlier. I thought he did, but so I wanted to check. He does still throw the four-seam at 99. Change-up, curveball, slider. Again, the curveball really doesn't count as a pitch, especially for as slow as he throws it. Four-seam change-up slider is an okay pitch mix. The Ks per 9 carry this card at 118 and good pitch and clutch at 112. Good velocity difference, but really without the curveball, it's not too much of a difference. And this card also lacks control at only 52. So overall, I think this card is decent, but it's not amazing. So I'm going to put it in the B tier. Next up, we have the Mets Team Affinity Reward, John Franco. Good hits per 9 at 101. Decent Ks and walks. Good pitch and clutch at 112. Screwball, sinker, slider, four-seam circle change. Good velo difference at 19. I think this card is probably one of the better lefty relievers we have right now. Also, just due to the fact that it actually has decent control compared to the other ones. So I'm going to say currently John Franco is in the S tier. Speaking of S tier, this Hoby Milner, the hits and Ks are good. The walks are very good at 103. Great control. Good break. Sweeper, sinker, four-seam, circle change. Lefty-lefty. This card's next to impossible to hit. So he is also going to be in the S tier. Lastly, we have Matt Strom. Good hits per 9 at 94. Good Ks at 77. Walks are good at 81. Clutch is decent at 97. Good control, good velo. Good velo differential. Four-seam slider, sinker, cutter. Good pitch mix. Has all the meta pitches. I've seen him on multiple teams. He's difficult to hit. And I think he's one of the better lefty relievers we have. I think he's A tier. I don't think he's as good as Milner, Chapman, and Franco, but I think he's definitely up there. He's going to be top of A tier. All right, let me just save that tier list real quick, and I'll be right back. Okay, so here are the final tier lists for the relievers. On screen now is the right-handed relievers. And here are the lefties. So if you like this video, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel and hit that bell icon to be notified. And we will continue this series tomorrow with the catchers. This is Lazy Titan. See you again real soon.